New York City in the 1700s was a place of noise, ambition, and constant change. It was smaller than the city we know today, but it was already powerful. By the early 18th century, this port town at the mouth of the Hudson River had become one of the most important gateways in British North America. Merchants, sailors, enslaved laborers, soldiers, and craftsmen all moved through its narrow streets. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic paintings, engravings, and prints to life, allowing us to shift perspective, change camera angles, and move through the same scenes in ways their original artists never could. We are not just looking at still images, we are stepping into them. First, I want to talk about the harbor that made everything possible. This view shows New York Harbor in the early 1700s. By the early 1700s, New York Harbor was the city's beating heart. This view shows the waterfront crowded with wooden wharves, bobbing ships, and tall masts cutting into the sky. In the foreground, small boats ferry goods and people to shore. In the midground, merchant vessels unload barrels of sugar, rum, molasses, and flour. The air smells of salt, wet wood, and tar. Daily life here was loud and physical. Dock workers shouted over crashing waves. Sailors sang as they hauled ropes. Animals were driven straight off ships into the streets. But this place was dangerous. Fires often started near the docks. Storms could smash ships against the piers. Disease arrived quietly with every overseas voyage. This harbor mattered because it connected New York to the Atlantic world. By the mid-1700s, trade made the city rich. Today, while the shoreline has been pushed far outward, New York Harbor still defines the city's global role. This is the street life of Lower Manhattan. By the 1700s, the city barely stretched beyond today's Wall Street. This view shows narrow, winding streets lined with brick and wooden buildings. Shops open directly onto the road. Signs swing overhead. The skyline is low, broken only by church spires. People crowd every inch of space. Merchants argue over prices. Children run errands. Enslaved Africans carry goods under watchful eyes. You hear carts rattling over uneven stones and smell smoke from nearby kitchens. Tension was constant. Crime was common. Street lighting was poor. At night, the city could feel threatening. These streets mattered because they were the engine of colonial commerce. Later in the century, many would be widened or erased. Yet today, parts of this early street pattern still survive in Lower Manhattan. This view shows Wall Street before finance ruled it. By the early 1700s, Wall Street was not a financial center. This view shows a modest street running along the line of an old defensive wall built by the Dutch in the 1600s. Houses and taverns stand where banks would one day rise. Daily life here was surprisingly domestic. Neighbors talked from doorways. Animals wandered freely. Markets spilled into the street. But political tensions simmered. By the 1760s, protests against British taxes gathered nearby. Crowds could turn quickly. Wall Street mattered because it became a stage for resistance. After independence, it transformed into the financial heart of the nation. Today, the name remains, even though the wall itself is long gone. This is the site of Fort George. By the early 18th century, Fort George stood at the southern tip of Manhattan. This view shows cannons facing the harbor and soldiers drilling in the yard. The fort overlooks ships arriving from Europe and the Caribbean. Life here followed military rhythm. Commands echoed. Boots struck stone. Flags snapped in the wind. The danger was invasion. European empires constantly watched each other. Later, during the American Revolution, this fort would be occupied by British forces. Fort George mattered because it symbolized imperial control. It was later demolished. Today, the site sits near Bowling Green, one of the city's oldest public spaces. This view shows Trinity Church and its surroundings. By the mid-1700s, Trinity Church dominated the skyline. This view shows its spire rising above nearby homes and graveyards. In the foreground, funeral processions move slowly past worn headstones. Church life shaped daily routines. Bells marked time. Sermons reinforced order and hierarchy. Yet even here, tension existed. Disease outbreaks filled the graveyard quickly. Fires threatened wooden structures. Trinity mattered as a religious and social anchor. It was rebuilt multiple times. The church still stands today, though the city now towers above it. This is the marketplace at the city's edge. By the 1700s, open-air markets lined key streets. This view shows stalls piled with vegetables, fish, bread, and meat. Farmers arrive at dawn. Customers bargain loudly. The smells are strong. Fresh food mixes with waste. Flies hover everywhere. Markets were chaotic and unsanitary. Spoiled food caused illness. Arguments were common. These markets mattered because they fed the city. Later reforms pushed markets indoors. Modern food systems replaced them, but the need remains the same. This view shows enslaved labor in colonial New York. By the early 1700s, enslaved Africans made up a significant part of New York's population. This view shows men and women working in homes, docks, and workshops. Their presence is everywhere, though often unrecorded. Daily life for the enslaved was harsh and controlled. Movement was restricted. Punishments were severe. Fear shaped the city. After the 1712 slave revolt, laws became stricter. Public executions were meant to intimidate. This system mattered because it supported the city's economy. Slavery in New York ended gradually by the early 1800s. Its legacy, however, remains deeply embedded in the city's history. This is the road north toward open land. By the mid-1700s, traveling north from the city quickly led to farms and forests. This view shows a dirt road lined with fences and scattered houses. Beyond it, fields stretched toward the horizon. Life here was quieter. Farmers worked the land. Animals grazed freely. But isolation brought risk. Bandits sometimes targeted travelers. Weather could turn roads impassable. These roads mattered because they guided future growth. Today they align with major avenues running straight through Manhattan. This view shows New York during the American Revolution. By 1776, New York was at the center of conflict. This view shows soldiers marching, ships filling the harbor, and civilians watching anxiously. Smoke hangs in the air. Life was uncertain. Families fled. Supplies ran short. The city mattered strategically. British forces held it for much of the war. After independence, New York would briefly serve as the nation's capital. This is New York at the end of the 1700s. By the 1790s, the city was transforming. This view shows new buildings, busier streets, and a growing population. The young United States is taking shape. The dangers remain: fire, disease, crowding. But optimism grows. Trade expands. Institutions form. This moment mattered because it set the direction for the modern city. Much has changed since then, but the foundations were already laid. Looking at these AI reconstructions, the past feels closer than ever. The people no longer seem distant. Their streets, fears, and ambitions feel familiar. If there's another city, moment, or scene you'd like me to explore this way, let me know in the comments. Again, thank you so much.